Alice. I'm a host at House of ZK, and we're joined here today with Abdul, who is head of ecosystem at StarkWare. So House of ZK, as some context, recently came out with a Starknet report, and today's space will be diving deeper on Starknet's latest developments, including plans for Bitcoin integration and also their path towards full decentralization. So very excited to have Abdul here today to dive into all the details. I'm wondering, Abdul, if we can start off with maybe an introduction of yourself and your role at StarkWare.
Sure. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. About myself quickly. I came from an engineering background. I studied electronic banking and system security, and then I worked for 8 years in the fintech industry, building cloud-based payment solutions. So I used to say that before fighting banks, I used to work for them. Yes, and then I joined the crypto space, mostly on Ethereum at the beginning. So I spent something like 4 years working as Ethereum core developer. I spent a lot of time working on EIP 1559, so the fee market implementation of Ethereum. From A to Z basically until it went to mainnet. So it was a long journey, very interesting, both on the technical side but also the governance side of things, because different stakeholders, like discussions with the miners at this stage and so on, because it was reducing their revenues and stuff like that. Basically, I did a lot on the layer one, and then I wanted to explore something else. And at this time, the hot topic was about scaling. So I wanted to deep dive more into scaling solutions. So basically, I did a deep dive and analysis of all the existing potential solutions. And my conclusion at this time, it was like more than 3 years ago. My conclusion was that Starknet approach was the most promising. And I still believe it after all those years. And now that I am working internally at StarkWare, I believe it even more, I would say. But yeah, I had this feeling in the very early days of Starknet that it's unique. First of all, I think it's unique, the approach here. I really like the approach of saying we will build something from first principles. We don't care about legacy. We want to build something that we know will be the most efficient technology. So that was something that very convincing for me. And then I joined StarkWare, and now I'm leading basically the ecosystem and also the exploration team in StarkWare. We are doing a bunch of open source projects to showcase the technology, to understand the pain of the builders, and also some of the projects, sometimes they can become actual company or public good infrastructure for the Starknet ecosystem. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And wondering if you can go more into some more details of the StarkWare vision and also StarkNet's vision in general. Like you mentioned before that when you first joined StarkNet, you were really drawn to their approach. So wondering how the vision kind of evolved from when you first joined to its focus now, and maybe we can speak a bit about Starknet's new focus on settling on both Bitcoin and Ethereum.
Yeah. So yeah, at this time really, so it was before joining StarkWare, because actually before joining StarkWare, I was considering building something on a layer 2 in general, and then I wanted to choose a layer 2 to build on, and I did the analysis and then concluded that Starknet was the more promising, and then I met people from StarkWare, and then I had the opportunity to join StarkWare. But yeah, really what was very striking to me is that this long-term vision and this idea of saying we won't take the easiest path, we will do what is right to do. Everyone else was more or less trying to go fast on the market and to kind of try to go the easy path, which will be to have EVM compatibility and to try to reuse existing infrastructure, also to be able to attract developers more easily and so on. But StarkWare did not went into that path. The idea was really to build something that is future-proof and designed from first principles. StarkWare knew at this time that the EVM will be always a burden, an overhead when it comes to ZK. Sure, of course, it improved a lot and it keeps improving and so on. But we wanted to have like something that gives us full freedom and the sovereignty on our roadmap. Uh, uh, Initially, it was a long investment because we had to build literally everything from scratch. Unlike our competitors on the ZK field, they can directly reuse existing nodes implementation, a lot of existing Ethereum infrastructure and software stack. So we could not do that. We had to literally build everything, a language, a VM, full nodes, sequencer, prover, literally everything. In fact, and I tweeted about that a few weeks ago, I was thinking about all we built, and there is no single team in the world that actually built all we did. Like we have literally full ownership and expertise on the full stack, like everything. And there is no single other entity that do everything. Either some are focused more on the blockchain side and they are using existing ZK technology from someone else, or yeah, anyway. So that was what was very important for me. And also, retrospectively, I think it contributed to kind of create this identity of Starknet. Initially, it came from a downside, which was to not be EVM compatible, etc. So it was harder to bring developers. It was harder to create an ecosystem and so on. But at the same time, the people that came, they came, I would say, for the right reasons, and they are more engaged and committed to Starknet ecosystem. Because unlike an EVM layer 2, let's say you are building an application, and if you deploy on an EVML2, you don't have a particular attachment to one particular EVML2 because you can simply spread and pray and deploy on all EVML2s. And so for us, it was not the same. So I think it was both a motivation filter because there is no point of learning a new language and to do just something that is not meaningful. So you really had to want to do something like meaningful or crazy. The craziness is also an interesting part of Starknet. There was this motto in Starknet to keep it strange, which is basically the name of the GitHub organization that my team has, the exploration team. It was a good way to nerd snipe people because Starknet literally enabled the possibility to do crazy stuff that were not possible anywhere else. So it was a good motivation filter. It was a good way to nerd snipe people who wanted to do different things. And it created this identity of strong, passionate builders that wanted to do meaningful stuff and also explore beyond what was possible at this time. I like to say that StarkWare is really a trailblazing company that loves to explore uncharted territories, and now we do it again with Bitcoin, and we will deep dive more. It's always the same, more or less, when you do a retrospective. StarkWare comes with an idea. Initially, everyone say, "Oh, it's either dumb or impossible or crazy," and then years later, it becomes almost a standard in the industry. It's the same for hash-based proving, Starks, Validium, and a lot of stuff that StarkWare initially pioneered. So I like this trailblazing way. Yeah.
And I really like how you mentioned that StarkWare's approach is building something to be more future-proof and designed from those first principles. And it's also very amazing to hear that kind of the entire stack was built from scratch, built from those first principles. So that's all great to hear. And diving more into your guys' very recent big announcement for integrating with Bitcoin. I'm curious to hear about the main motivation that Starknet had for settling simultaneously both on Bitcoin and Ethereum. Curious to hear why you guys chose to do this right now and what implications does offering this choice over these two chains bring for Bitcoin users and also Ethereum users and then also developers.
Yeah. So in terms of motivation, so first of all, the interest of StarkWare for Bitcoin is not new. In fact, it's very old. You probably all know the famous video of Eli in 2013 discussing about potential usage of ZK for Bitcoin and so on. And in fact, it's been like, I would say, yeah, probably something like 4 years that we have been exploring what we could do concretely on the Bitcoin ecosystem. So, for example, in 2021, we initially had this idea of building a ZK-like client for Bitcoin in Cairo. So, Cairo is the language that we invented for generating efficient Stark proofs. And then some people did a hackathon to build a proof of concept of that, and then it became an actual project with ZeroSync from Robin Linus, who then became the creator of BitVM. So he used Cairo to build this kind of ZK-like client for Bitcoin. So the idea was to implement the consensus rules verification of Bitcoin in Cairo, and then you can prove basically the consensus of the Bitcoin chain. So it can enable interesting use cases like instant synchronization. You can quickly know that a block is part of the canonical blockchain. So it can improve the IBD process, the initial block download. When you go and you want to sync on the Bitcoin blockchain, you need to go through this phase, which is to synchronize on the network. It's painful and so on. And in any case, you have to do it. But if you use ZK-like client, you can save some computation and some time because you can be more efficient in the way you will synchronize in a nutshell. Just saying that, yeah, this interest of doing stuff with ZK on Bitcoin is not new, and we did many experimentation. And what really accelerated this willingness to expand on Bitcoin was the context on Bitcoin that has changed over those past years, and this kind of Bitcoin renaissance that we start to see more and more. This willingness to go beyond what is currently possible on Bitcoin. A lot of research and brain power is coming back to Bitcoin to think about what we could do more. And there were also the discussions about opcat and so on. And then we realized that with this simple opcode, we could actually be able to verify Stark proofs. And we did research and implementation with Weiking to actually prove it and do it, and we were able to do it. Of course, not on Bitcoin mainnet because it's not enabled, but we did that on some Bitcoin testnets and even on a Bitcoin sidechain that has opcat, so fractal mainnet, fractal Bitcoin, sorry, which is a Bitcoin sidechain with opcat enabled, and we were able to actually do a Stark proof verification there. So this is for the motivation. In terms of motivation, I forgot to say, but and I will speak mostly for me personally. For me, really Ethereum and Bitcoin are really special, and they are very different from all other alt layer ones. I will say simply that to me they are the only ones that are credible attempts to build unstoppable systems that can actually resist to nation state attacks, even globally coordinated nation state attacks. And for me, this is the North Star. When I want to see those kind of unstoppable systems, this is for me what matters the most. And I consider today that only those two are credible attempts. So they are really special, and it's fascinating that still today they are not connected in a trustless way. Those two big serious attempts to build unstoppable systems. So there is value in trying to connect them both in in a trustless manner, or at least in a most trust minimized manner. That's the main motivation. And when it comes to use cases and possibilities that it can enable, we still don't know fully what kind of stuff it can enable, but again, we rely on the creativity of builders. We basically want to offer new paths, new avenues, and then it's up to the builders to actually leverage those new primitives and design to build crazy stuff and come up with some ideas. Generally speaking, we think that there is value in connecting those chains trustlessly and being able to tap into the liquidity of both chains trustlessly. So if an application is able to tap on the liquidity of both settlement layers, then maybe it can offer new primitives for DeFi, new kind of applications that you could be able to combine those two and come with new kind of applications or use cases. But again, we really rely on the creativity of app builders. Our focus is on the protocol and enabling maximum of possible stuff to do in the most secure manner, and then it's up to the app builders to create cool stuff with it.
Absolutely. And on the topic of motivation, I really liked how you mentioned just on the global level, you see both Bitcoin as Ethereum having this resistance against nation state attacks. So really great to hear that you see like this higher vision more on the global level as well. And really great to also hear about StarkWare's explorations within the OpCap possibilities and just on some topics within specific applications. You mentioned that there may be many use cases that are enabled when we're able to tap into the liquidity of both chains. Are there any kinds of specific applications that you would see benefit the most from this unified execution layer between Ethereum and Bitcoin? Are there any kinds of experiments that you're seeing right now, or any types of use cases in progress that you're very optimistic about?
Um, Overall, I think like that it can probably improve a lot the efficiency on many aspects. For example, because you would not have to go through a lot of intermediaries to do cross-chain bridging without relying on third parties. So I believe that it can improve the efficiency in terms of the capital efficiency and the fees that the user will pay and so on. So for all the cross-chain use cases, I think first of all it can improve the efficiency, and then possibly even enable stuff that are not possible today. For example, maybe on the lending borrowing landscape, where you would like use the collateral from one chain to borrow stuff on the other chain and then put it into work into some DeFi protocols maybe. Um, um, I mean, again, it's more up to application developers, and I'm not an application builder myself, but I can definitely imagine that this kind of new primitives can unlock very interesting stuff because it will be more secure, more efficient, and generally better in terms of UX because you will have like this unified experience without involving third parties. Yeah.
Absolutely. And on the topic of also some challenges that you guys are currently encountering or may anticipate to encounter, are there any kinds of specific limitations or trade-offs that you need to consider, just general challenges in implementing Starknet as an L2 on Bitcoin? Are there any types of lessons from, say, the Ethereum implementations that can apply to Bitcoin, like say with data availability, with security considerations, or are there a separate set of challenges that we need to consider?
Yeah, good question. So there are two aspects in the question. The first is about building Starknet on top of Bitcoin, and then there is a question of the dual settlement, like how to use both at the same time. And I think it's important to separate those things because it's very likely that we will do that in two stages, and maybe at the first stage we will have Starknet that can settle on Bitcoin, but no possibility to do the cross-chain use cases that we mentioned before and so on. So for the dual settlements, this is indeed very challenging, and a lot of people are asking questions about that, and it's the kind of stuff that people say are impossible and so on. And we are working hard on the design right now, and we are publishing blog posts in the coming weeks to give more information about our thoughts about this design with how we would handle basically two pending states and one final state, and basically we want to give the possibility of both sides to be able to know what is happening on the other side in a trustless manner. So in the protocol we would have a light client, an Ethereum light client running on the Bitcoin side and vice versa, and we would combine that basically to be able to have two pending states on both sides and to have one final state that is only possible to reach when they agreed upon the same pending state. So this is the general idea, but of course there are a lot of challenges because on one side you have finality with Ethereum proof of stake that has finality. On Bitcoin you simply have no finality in theory. You have practical finality because everyone is basically just waiting for a number of confirmation, usually 6 blocks, so 1 hour. So you can play with the parameters basically, but there is no real finality. So of course it comes with a lot of questions. What happens if there is a reorg on the Bitcoin side? This kind of stuff basically. So there is a lot of challenges. We don't pretend to have all the answers right now. We are confident that we will come up with an efficient design and solution, but there are still some challenges. So for the Bitcoin expansion itself, so we will do that in multiple stages. And important part of the recent announcements is that unlike before, now the plan is not contingent to Opcat or a soft fork that will enable Stark verification. We want to start the expansion even before that. And our vision is that we will simply do what is the state of the art of what is possible to do on Bitcoin today at any given time. So today, the state of the art, unfortunately, is multi-sig, so federated model. And then, hopefully, at some point in the coming months, we will see the first BitVM-like solutions in production on mainnet, and then it will be already an incremental step because the trust assumptions are better. Because, for example, on multisig, you have n out of m out of n trust assumptions, so you need usually a majority of the actors to be honest for the system to be secure. So BitVM, the new variants of BitVM are better because you need only one operator to be honest, so it's already way better. And also the worst case scenario is that even if they all collude, the worst case scenario is that they can freeze the funds, but they cannot steal. So there is less incentive to actually be malicious because the worst case scenario is that you can just confiscate the funds and do censorship basically, which of course is bad for users, but because this is the worst case scenario, you have less incentives for the operator to all collude and be malicious. Plus, again, we need only one honest operator. So it's already an improvement over what is currently possible on Bitcoin. So we will simply do what is the best solution possible on Bitcoin at any given time. So we are already rolling the plan with multisig options. And then when BitVM is audited and there is more trust in general about the design, because it's still fairly recent design and it's not battle tested yet and so on. So there will be some iterations. So we'll have Starknet with the BitVM bridge between Bitcoin and Starknet. We also plan to do some research on BitVM itself to try to improve it even further. So already today there are multiple variants of BitVM and there were already some innovations and improvements. So we are discussing and we will collaborate with existing BitVM teams to do some research and improve BitVM even further. We have some ideas already. And then in parallel, we continue to believe that at some point it would be cool to have something that can enable Stark verification on Bitcoin, because this is ultimately what you need if you want something that is the closest to be trustless as possible. The minimum trust assumption that you have, you need to be able to verify a zero-knowledge proof in an efficient manner to reduce the trust assumptions at maximum. So this is still our endgame vision, and we hope that one day it will be possible to build a fully fledged GK rollup on top of Bitcoin. We believe that it's the holy grail when it comes to scaling. Of course, it's not silver bullets. I mean, it's not a replacement of Lightning or whatever. I believe that we need multiple different options. Ultimately, because what matters is giving the optionality to users depending on their risk profile, depending on their level of knowledge and this kind of stuff, what they want to do, because you will not suggest the same solution for maybe just for payment as opposed to general purpose application, depending on how comfortable you are to manage your own node and liquidity and so on. It can affect what kind of solution can be best for you. So I don't claim that ZK rollups are the only way to go to reach scaling for Bitcoin. I believe they are an important way to get interesting properties on Bitcoin. And by the way, not only scaling, we believe that it can improve the UX, because then you can imagine to have like account abstraction like we have, and then you can give users the option to use Face ID authentication or other ways, social recovery wallets, this kind of stuff that is very important for normies, because for them it's hard to have self-custody in the traditional manner, which is to handle a seed phrase and to back it up and so on. It can be hard for some people. So if you can still have self-custody but in a more accessible manner, it can be interesting. Also, we are doing research about quantum resistance. We believe that it can be an interesting path for Bitcoin. And yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And really great how you mentioned that you're supporting a variety of different solutions and giving that optionality to users, giving users that kind of choice. And as you mentioned, different users will have different levels of knowledge, different risk profiles, different ideas of what they want to do or applications they want to build. So really, really like how you mentioned that. It's important to give users that kind of choice. And then relating to when you mentioned about like our current state for federated and multi-sig models, and then perhaps in the future more BitVM powered solutions. When we're applying this to bridging, I'm curious to hear about what is needed for Starknet to build a fully trustless and also fully native bridge, and maybe some roles that I know that the research team is also looking into governance. So I'm wondering if you can speak more about some of the roles that covenants have, and then also how this may change if, say, OPCAT is implemented in the future.
Yeah, right. So indeed, to achieve the full vision and the trustless native bridge, we need covenants. So we need two things. We need the ability to verify Stark proofs, and we need the ability to restrict how transactions are spent on Bitcoin. And for that, you need covenants. You need what is called the introspection, which is the ability for a transaction to know the context in which it's running. So because you need that ultimately if you want to implement the equivalent of smart contracts on Bitcoin. Because with the UTXO model on Bitcoin currently, if you have the knowledge on how to spend the UTXO, you can spend it in whatever ways you want. So it means that you can concretely change the state how you wish, because there is no proper state on Bitcoin. The state is actually all the UTXOs. And covenants, they give you the ability to restrict how UTXO is spent. And this ability gives you the possibility to implement smart contract and to restrict the spending of UTXO and the conditions on how it's spent. So typically, you need that to implement a bridge where people need to actually always go through the bridge, and you cannot change the state in arbitrary manners because you want to respect the conditions. And in the case of building a ZK rollup, the conditions are providing valid state transitions with zero knowledge proof, and then the proof is verified on the layer one, and only if it is valid you can move to the next state. So for that you need efficient Stark verification. So OPCAT can give you that because you need to do a lot of Merkle tree and stuff like that. And you need something that like OPCAT to do that, and you need covenants to have the introspection and restrict how the UTXOs are spent.
Yeah, got it. And wanted to also talk about some of the general Starknet developments happening. So recently a new version has been released. What I was wondering if we could dive more into some of the improvements that are made to the developer experience compared to some of the earlier versions. So one of the developments is Starknet now being Cairo native, and then also I know that you guys have plans for implementing a distributed sequencer architecture and then also integrating your guys' stew prover as well. So wondering about what kinds of advantages this brings to the general developer experience, say in reducing fees or faster smart contract execution. I'm just curious to hear more about that.
Yeah. So overall, yes, it's faster execution and cheaper fees. So it's interesting because Starknet is already the cheapest and fastest layer 2 on Ethereum. And we are still improving. We continue to improve because we want to be future proof, and even given because we are far from reaching the current capacity that Starknet has with the current demand. But still, we don't want to slow down the improvements because at some point, hopefully, the demand will come and we need to be ready. So we want to continue to improve the infrastructure. So for Cairo native, the idea is very interesting actually, and it's very innovative. It's an idea that came from Lambda class. The idea is, okay, so we have a virtual machine that runs the smart contracts on Starknet that are written in Cairo. So usually you have a sequencer that gets transactions from the user. It runs the Cairo VM, execute the program, and then update the state, blah, blah, blah. So the downside is that when you have a virtual machine, you don't run the smart contracts directly on the machine code. You have an abstraction, you have some overhead. Your machine will run a program that will run the virtual machine, basically. So you have some abstraction and overhead. The idea of Cairo native is to transform those Cairo programs to something that can run directly on the machine. And then the sequencer, instead of running the Cairo VM, it can run directly the program on the machine level. So it's way, way faster. So this is how it works. And you can do that on the sequencer level. Usually on the ZK rollup, you have like two main phases. The first one that is currently the bottleneck is the sequencer. So you submit a transaction, it receives by the sequencer, executed, blah, blah, blah. This is a synchronous operation. It needs to update the state and so on. And then later on, there is this asynchronous phase of the proving. The proving is done asynchronously and massively in parallel. You can spin hundreds of machines that will basically take part of the jobs to prove and then do some proving, and then there is the recursion and so on. So it's not a bottleneck because it's asynchronous and you can always spin up a lot of machines to parallelize the computation. On the sequencer, you need to be very fast. And the cool thing is that on the sequencer, you don't actually generate the proof. So you can go through the native representation of the program. You cannot do that on the proving because you need the execution trace. And for that, you need to go through the Cairo virtual machine. But on the sequencer, because you don't have to generate the proof, you can run this program. Okay. So this is how it works. And in terms of benefits, it gives faster execution. And because it's faster and it takes lower computation power, we can reduce the fees. Because ultimately, what you charge on the sequencer is also proportional to the operating costs of operating the blockchain. So if you reduce the operating cost, you can impact the users' fees and reduce those fees. So the impact is, yes, lower fees and faster execution.
Yeah, really great to hear some of the very careful design considerations that the team has made with this as well, and kind of mapping that out, how that would directly affect the user's experience. I think is like really important. So that's great to hear. And also wanted to hear some more about some of the other applications that were coming out of Starknet recently. So recently there was the announcement of the Argent Metal card. And previously you talked about Starknet's focused on an improved UX and how we can make self-custody in a more accessible manner. Wanted to hear about some of the implications that the Argent Metal card, which is being built on Starknet, has in being completely self-custodial, and how you envision that can bring us closer to real world, like crypto adoption in the real world.
So I believe the Argent card is a very interesting product and quite innovative, I would say. So first of all, it's self-custodial. So you keep the custody of your assets. So it's very important. We all know how self-custody is important. We had a lot of crises in the crypto space that demonstrate always how important it is. So it's very cool if you can have a solution that is self-custodial. So neither Argent nor their partner, Kulipa, can steal the funds of the user. So it's very important. so the user always remains in custody of the asset. And unlike some of the existing competitors that provide similar kind of products, they don't have a top-up mechanism or you need to use a different wallet. So this is very cool. You can use directly the funds that you have on your existing wallet. And this wallet, you can use it for all DeFi application, all applications on Starknet. It's not something that is siloed and so on. So unlike other competitors where you have to do a top up and you can only use this preloaded amount and so on. So with Argent Card, you can use the wallet, your normal wallet, and use it in DeFi, and you can use it like that. So it's very cool. Also, one thing that is cool is that they have no hidden fees. So like one USDC that you spent is $1 actually. So there is no hidden fees. They really leverage smartly the account abstraction that Starknet has. So with session keys and native account abstraction, they can provide best of both worlds. You can keep self-custody and security, but you can provide a great UX on the user to make it seamless to use in the daily operations and so on. So yeah, I think it's a very good product. It's very well packaged. It's quite practical. They have also interesting partnerships and perks that comes with it for the users. But yeah, for me, the main important thing is that how much they care about self-custody and leveraging well the Starknet infrastructure and the native account abstraction to provide good UX and good security. And users don't have to choose between those.
Yeah, it's really great that they're able to combine both that optimized UX with the native account abstraction, but at the same time enabling that self-custody. And yeah, I see it as, that's not being restricted to just people who have been in the space for a while or crypto natives, but even to people, outside. And it's very exciting to see that Starknet has some applications that can like bridge beyond just the Web3 space. So I think that's very exciting. And I also wanted to ask you a bit about some of the team's plans towards full decentralization. So I'm wondering if you can speak about what full decentralization will enable and some of the steps that the team is taking to achieve this vision. From my knowledge, you have a few different pillars that you're focusing in staking and operation, in decentralizing the governance component as well. And also just curious, in addition to those next steps, I know that you are also intending on open sourcing the entire stack. So curious to hear about how this also ties into the decentralization roadmap.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, why do we need to decentralize? Usually there is a lot of misconception when it comes to ZK rollup and the need to decentralize. So we need to decentralize, but not for the same reason as you need to decentralize layer one. The security itself does not come from the decentralization. I will define more what I mean by security, but with the ZK rollup, even if centralized, the operator cannot lead to an invalid state transition because all the state transitions are proven on the layer one. So you still have security from this point of view. However, we still need to decentralize mainly for two reasons. The first one is liveness, because if you have only one operator, if our sequencer is down, the blockchain is frozen and then users cannot transact. So this is one. We need to decentralize for liveness and redundancy. And the second one is censorship resistance. If you have one operator, technically speaking, we could censor transactions. Of course, we don't do it, but we don't want that people have to trust us that we don't do it, of course. Even if there would be ways in the centralized setup to prevent censorship. In fact, for example, we demonstrated it on StarkX, so the ancestor of Starknet. For example, with DYDX V3, which was running on StarkX, and they moved to a Cosmos chain. And we had what we call escape hatch, which is a way for the user to be able to withdraw the funds on the L1, even if the operator is not running the system, or if it is malicious. And in fact, it was used in productions and people users were able to withdraw millions of dollars without anyone running the system. So the system is down now, but people can still withdraw their funds with the escape hatch. So it works with application-specific use cases, like the case of StarkX. For general purpose applications, it's harder. But at some point, we want to do more research and to come with a design that can enable to have the same censorship resistance guarantees for general purpose applications. Okay, but in the meantime, the best way to achieve censorship resistance is via decentralization. So this is the second reason why we need to decentralize. So in terms of how we are at on this, we designed the consensus system, which is some improvements over Tendermint consensus. So it's a BFT consensus mechanism, proof of stake. And we are working with Informa Systems, who is the team that built Commit BFT, so the consensus engine of Cosmos blockchains. And we are working on two different implementations. They are working on their own implementation, and we are working on our implementation. We want some diversity. This is something common in our stack. Like, for example, we have 5 full node implementations, multiple sequencers, and StarkWare is not the only maintainer. We have StarkWare implementation for those pieces, but we have external teams that are building other pieces. It's crucial for the decentralization of the protocol. Not only when you decentralize, you don't decentralize only the network, you decentralize also the governance, the software stack, everything. And we invested a lot actually in terms of client diversity. In fact, we are literally the only L2 that cares about that. And I will tell you, it's extremely frustrating that no one cares about that, unfortunately. But we are literally the only layer 2 team that has this level of decentralization of the stack. In fact, we are literally more decentralized than even alt layer 1s, except Ethereum, of course. But we are more decentralized on this aspect than almost all alt layer 1s, which is surprising. Anyway, so we came up with a design. Now both teams are working on the implementation, making good progress. We already have some small testnet running that are interoperable between both. So there is still some time before we can roll up those things to mainnet, because it has some impact on the sequencers and so on. But yeah, we are making good progress. Now we know that the consensus design is working properly and so on. And yeah, so the plan is to hopefully maybe end of year, something like that, start to have like some decentralization of the network and have multiple sequencers running Starknet and not have only StarkWare operating Starknet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And it's very great to hear that from the start, Starknet has stayed in its vision for decentralization and how you guys are addressing both liveness and then also censorship resistance, and then also that focus within client diversity. So really great how the vision has remained, the decentralization vision has remained really consistent over the years. And then also as a last question before we close today's session, I'm wondering how audience members can get more involved, anyone who is listening here, and then also what audience members can expect in terms of any of the fronts within research, say relating to Bitcoin or to Starks, and then also any kinds of new ecosystem developments.
Yes, sure. So the first thing would be to follow the StarkWare and Starknet Twitter accounts. I think it's the best way to get regular updates, especially for non-developers. For developers, usually you can get all the updates and information on GitHub and so on. So for the users that want to participate in the discussions, the governance, the discussion about Starknet on the protocol and everything, I suggest you to have a look on the community forum, so community.starknet.io. And this is a place where everything related to Starknet protocol are discussed, and people can participate to the governance of Starknet, propose some ideas and stuff like that. You can also follow the regular core dev calls. So we have something similar to Ethereum, where once every 2 weeks there is core dev calls between Starknet ecosystem core devs. Fun fact, usually like we have like not even 10% of representation in those calls that are coming from StarkWare. So it's very good sign that we are good in terms of diversity and decentralizing the actual infrastructure. So they are sharing regular progress and updates in terms of the development of all the infrastructure and so on. So yeah, for users, I suggest to follow Twitter accounts, and I suggest to try Starknet, to try the applications on Starknet, to try to join the different Telegram groups on Starknet. We have a very welcoming community. Like it's like a big family. People are really willing to help each other. It's really easy to create synergies between projects in the ecosystem. They like to collaborate together. There is very healthy ecosystem even between competitors and so on. So yeah, just try Starknet, join the community, engage with people, come also in physical events if you can, meet us, discuss with us. Yeah, we are very open and keen to welcome anyone on Starknet. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Abdul, for all the insights, and also I really appreciate hearing Starknet's kind of user-first approach and how the new focus towards Bitcoin is not a pivot, but instead, a step closer to the vision that you guys have, which has remained relatively consistent. And yeah, I really appreciate all of the insights from today.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Abdul.
Yes.
I see that you have to hop off soon, but
Yes.
really appreciate you for being here today, and would love to invite you back for any kinds
Yeah.
of